I'm here because I am a roaring lion crying out, righteousness. I know that God called me. Let me tell you something. You say what you want to say about me. You can call me all kind of names. You can, but when you can walk into Rayford Prison in the year 1976 and convince your prison guard, who's a white man, to give his life to Jesus and start preaching the word of God, and become a pastor himself, and then after you get released from that prison, that man, with his own money, on his own dime, comes from Florida to stand in the pulpit where God's put you in a church in Harlem and preaches. When you can do that, then you can talk to me. You can talk to me. But don't you be telling me nothing about no Billy Graham. Don't you telling me nothing about no T.D. Jakes. Don't you be telling me nothing about these so-called entertainers. Don't you telling me nothing about no Nelson Mandela, no damn Barack Obama. Don't you be telling that. I don't want to hear nothing about that. Until you can get and you in prison. Don't be telling me about no Malcolm X. Don't talk to me about Malcolm. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I was able to get this man to give it. He's my prison guard. I'm a prisoner in Rayford Union Correctional Facility. I was able to convince him, give his life to Jesus. While I was a prisoner, inmate. And not just that, but inspired him when he watched me stand in his class every day and preach to 50 men. Every day I'd get up and preach for 2-3 hours. He became a preacher and a pastor, and then came up to New York on his own dime. When you can tell me Malcolm did that, then we can talk. When you tell me Martin King has done anything like that, or Nelson Mandela had done anything like that, then we can talk. We can talk. But until you can tell me they've done anything like that, I don't want to hear it. You ain't impressing me just because got a whole lot of communist people that supported King and Nelson Mandela, these communist people. Don't you tell me nothing. Jesus, I was under one of the worst prisons in the 1970s. You go back to Florida in the 1970s, everybody in prison had 100 years plus. Everybody. I was in the worst prison in Florida, in the state of Florida, Jim Crow, racist Florida. They still had segregation in Florida. My mom's Mabley said it wasn't Miami. She said it's Dayami. It ain't Miami, it's Dayami, back in the 70s. But I was able in that prison to convince, because I knew God had called me, I was able to convince a white man who was a prison guard. He was a white man. He was a prison guard who looked at my heart and knew that I loved Jesus, gave his heart to Jesus, left the prison, became a preacher and became a pastor, and then later on came to this church and preached the testimony when he looked at my heart and saw there was no hate in my heart for the white man. He saw the love that I had in my heart for Jesus. While in prison, I'm converting my prison guard. While in prison, you don't get no story like that. You don't get no story like that. You don't get this. I don't think you got that from Joseph down in the prison over there in Egypt years ago. No, and it's true. Everybody knows it's true. That man looked in my heart And he saw the love of Jesus and decided he wanted to become saved. Got saved, became a preacher and a pastor. One of my blessings of my life. And I thank God. I was just being the quintessential James David Manning when I was in prison, just like I am right now.